The Nuggets wrap preseason with a win. Jokic looks awesome. Got some questions about some of the combinations we're going to see this season. I've got takes off of what we've seen in preseason, all that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. I appreciate all you everydayers and being a part of our community. Really appreciate you guys being with us. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, coming to you solo on a Thursday night. I'm actually recording this and not doing our usual live stream. Just didn't feel like going through all the tech stuff after the last preseason game of the season. As you're listening to this, you will be able to catch on Friday morning Swipa and Adam with their preseason wrap up thoughts in the morning of Friday, and then another show in podcast form. You'll be able to listen to that show later in the day on Friday. So 5 days a week for you on the show. On today's show, going to wrap up the last preseason game for the Denver Nuggets and a win over the Los Angeles Clippers. We'll talk about what we saw in that game, what we didn't see. We'll talk about some big takeaways in particular. I've got three kind of key takes that I want to get into as the show goes along. We'll talk about one guy I kind of like, which is Braxton Key. He's not going to be a major part of the show, but I do want to mention I like Braxton Key. And we'll talk about the rest of the game. Let's start kind of here. Nuggets get the win, 103-90. Good preseason in terms of the overall performance, right? Like, I always say, what you just don't want to have happen is you just don't want to be winless in preseason. It's there's kind of a bad omen around it. You tend to have bad seasons more than not. It doesn't necessarily determine it. Some of the data's a little bit fuzzy on it. So it's not huge. It's not like massive. But I do think it's kind of like, it's good that the Nuggets have been able to have the kind of preseason that they had. They were able to finish up, look good, accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish, find out some things in preseason. And in this one, I think you're really if you're going to point to a story, there's two stories, I think. One is Bones Highland really wants to get revenge on the Nuggets. Bones finishes with 25 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, 2 steals, 10 of 15 from the field in 25 minutes. He had 25 points in 25 minutes as a starting spot for the Los Angeles Clippers versus his former team. And look, maybe he wasn't going extra hard because it's the Nuggets, right? Because Bones honestly needs to play like this all the time because he has to cement a role on a pretty deep team that has championship aspirations. But it was just kind of interesting to see how hard he kind of went at this game, and he really went at everybody. There was a possession early on where he cooked Reggie Jackson with a post up dribble into a post up fake and then up and under move, and you're like, oh, it's Reggie Jackson, and he got Aaron Gordon on the exact same move later in the half. It was really kind of funny. But the big takeaway is Nikola Jokic, who goes in this game. Jokic goes 9 of 15 from the field. He goes for 25 points in 28 minutes with 14 boards, 8 assists, 1 steal, just 1 turnover, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, and then finishes with a +4 in this game. And Joker just looked amazing. He just looked absolutely amazing. And my takeaway leads to a prediction. And my prediction is this: Nikola Jokic is going to have the best impact season of his career. What that means is he's not going to put up the most points or the most rebounds or the most assists of his career. I don't think he'll lead. I don't think he'll have career best in any of those categories or field goal percentage. But I think that he will have the best plus minus. And that's pretty high bar for a guy that has been dominant in those categories the last couple of years. The biggest thing, the thing that could make the Nuggets floor so high that they just breeze over 50 wins and into the mid 50s, high 50s, close to 60, is if Nikola Jokic is just so effortlessly good that there's never any exhaustion, fatigue, there's no cost to it. He is just so good that he is able to dominate games with a very casual lightness, in the way that if you go back and you watch mid to late Bird seasons, that's what he used to do. If you watch, honestly, like 14-ish to 18 LeBron, same deal. Like, he can just dominate these games at such a high level. And it's not just him. If you watch the starters, there is an effortlessness to all of it. Like, the game is coming easier to Jamal Murray than it ever has before. The game is coming easier to Aaron Gordon than it ever has before. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope feels extremely comfortable with this team and in his role and in his spot and in everything that he needs to do for this team. That fifth starter is occupied by Michael Porter Jr., who once again did not play in this game due to the ankle injury. We'll see how he looks on the opening night. But I think there's a very good chance that Nikola Jokic actually eclipses his previous marks in terms of plus minus, which, again, I need to stress, that's a very high bar for him to pass. He's been the most impactful player over the last 4 years. And I think he's set to have his most impactful one. I don't think the stats are going to be there, but I just think you're going to look up and be like, instead of it being like, oh, yeah, they're up 10. It's like, oh, they're up 15. Oh, they're up 20. There may be a legitimate chance this season for the Nuggets to actually be able to be up enough to rest starters. That depends on the bench, who we'll talk about, but Jokic's overwhelming presence in these games, I mean, it's just really difficult to put into words. Like, there's just so many sequences where he's making play after play after play. And, I went back after the game and I just rewatched clip by clip by clip. And they're just these stretches where it's whip pass, lob, bounce pass, three-pointer, running, finish, and one. Like, these sequences where he just hits you and there really is nothing that you can do. And that level of domination is extremely hard to reach. But more than anything, it's hard to slow down because nothing that Joker's doing is based off of he's in great shape and so his game's in a good place. It's not, yeah, his shot is really good right now because he's in good condition. It's just an understanding and knowledge of the game. There are not things that can slow this Joker down. Like, if he is healthy, there is nothing the defense can do. He has too many ways to hurt you, and his teammates, to their credit, understand how to take advantage of whatever it is that the opponent brings to the floor. This is going to be, I think, one of the best Jokic seasons, and that's coming off of 2 seasons where he was MVP and a third where he probably deserved to be MVP. And I still think this is going to be one that, for basketball heads like me, I'm going to go, I know that his numbers weren't that good that season, but do you remember after they won the title in 2023-24? That's what this team looks like to me, because it is so effortless the way that the Nuggets starters are able to dominate the game on the offensive side of the floor. On the other side, we'll talk a little bit about some of the other contributors. We'll talk a little bit more about, okay, we've talked about the good with this unit. What am I seeing with the rest of it, especially versus the Clippers? In particular, there's one defensive habit I think that continues to be a real issue for Denver. We'll talk about that. I want to give a shout out to a guy that on the bench that I think is looking pretty good and hasn't gotten a lot of run. We'll talk about all of those things as we continue on Locked On Nuggets. Right now, I want to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. I'm betting on the Broncos this weekend. You should not be a 1.5 dogs to the Green Bay Packers at home. The Broncos are bad. They are not that bad. And so I think there's real value on the Denver Broncos to get a win this weekend at home in the comfy status. Maybe the Nuggets championship aura as they prepare for banner night will extend to the Broncos. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. You can bet spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. NBA, they've got so many great futures up. Go take a look at all of them. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Friday. As you're listening to this, Adam Mares and Swipa will be with you. You'll have another episode later today from those two, recapping what they thought of preseason. Let's talk a little bit about what some of the other things from this preseason game versus the Clippers, because there is a continuing issue that I think is pretty significant. Mares mentioned over on the DMVR show, they had a defensive rating of 90 in this game, and that's really good. So it's like hard for me to super complain about how this thing is going. At the same time, I think my biggest concern is I want to see, not on opening night and not even on the Friday game versus Memphis, I want to see, like, in 2 weeks, once November rolls around, what does the transition defense look like? Because this team still has a real problem with stopping the ball, and they did a very good job of it in the playoffs. Like, they have the gear, okay? They've proven that. And I do kind of wonder, though, how much of this is in the playoffs about the fact that it does slow down, that the game is slower, it's more half court. Teams do take their time. And I think that plays into the Nuggets' strengths, because you watch the Clippers tonight, and they got up and down the floor and they got into the paint before the Nuggets were even approaching a defensive attempt. There has to be a better emphasis on stopping the ball. It's just going to continue to be, I think, a real problem for how this team is built. And look, they're always going to be a little bit on the slow side in transition because of Nikola. That's just going to be the reality, because he's not Miles Turner huffing it up and down the floor. He's fast. He whipped Anthony Davis's backside up and down the floor in terms of speed in the conference finals. But the Nuggets are a slow team, and they're always going to kind of get beat in transition a little bit. But I do think that there's a lot they can get better at about stopping the ball in transition and making sure that teams don't get downhill. And it wasn't just the starters. And that's the thing, is like, a lot of the reason I'm concerned about this is that it's not Nikola. It's not like, oh, he beat a really good perimeter attempt and then there was no rim protection because Joker was lagging behind. That's honestly not it. It's just like guards don't pick them up fast enough, or if they do, they get completely beat. And some of this is young guys and inexperience in preseason with Hunter Tyson, etc. And if you're sitting here and you're going, Matt, it's preseason, like they're not going to be picking guys up at half court in preseason, you're absolutely right. I think my issue is that I wonder about their defensive ability to do so. Like, I'm just concerned that I don't think they have enough lateral foot speed on this team to be able to make those plays, because you can't rely on KCP to do that all the time. And this is an area where Bruce Brown made a big difference. A pretty good counter to this would be, hey, Christian Brown hasn't played in preseason. That's a pretty good counter, right? Because Christian's a guy that can do those things. And he's done that before. Like, he'll put a little bit of pressure at the ball handler on the perimeter just to get them to slow down and maybe get into their half court set. But I am worried a little bit about how routinely the Nuggets get beat on the edge in transition and in mid transition, where it's not necessarily a full on fast break, but like guys are getting back and then a guy makes a move and he's into the paint and they're able to score pretty easy. There has to be a level of bend, don't break with the Nuggets defense if they're going to get into closer to 10 than 15 where they finished last season. I don't know, honestly, if that needs to be a priority for this team. You know, like Malone's always going to say, Malone was back tonight, by the way. I want to welcome him back. Malone's always going to say he wants his teams to be top 5 in defense. Like, that's something that he wants and cares about, and there's good reasons for it. But I don't think it's realistic. At the same time, the slide between 15 and 20 matters. Denver needs to not be 18, 19, 20 in defense. They don't have to be 6, 7, 8, but they need to not be 16, 17, 18, 19. They especially need to stay out of the 20s. You start to get in the 20s, and no matter how dominant you are offensively, it's just a chore every night. It makes it, you're not going to have, let me put it this way. When we talked about those nights when the Nuggets are up 20 and they can rest starters, you're not going to have that if your defense is 20th. You're just not. You're going to have to be closer to 10. Like, the Nuggets range for a defensive rating is probably, and this is based off of like, okay, let's do deductive logic based off of precedent. And sometimes I'm like, you know what, it just doesn't work that way and weird things happen. But let's assume that rational play wins out. They're going to be somewhere between 10 and 20. And where they are on that scale is going to determine a lot of their floor and their margin for error in these games throughout the course of the regular season. And that's where allowing easy points in transition, which this is what I think is really funny. I think Denver is really good defensively in half-court matchups versus stars. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Russell Westbrook didn't play tonight. Much easier to defend them. And look, they had a 90 defensive rating in this game. But I do kind of think that junk ball and a little bit of randomness, and we see this with the Raptors games, right? When Denver's had trouble with Toronto, where it's just, hey, we just have a bunch of athletes and we're just going to run at you. They struggle with that a little bit. They're much better at half-court execution because they've worked hard to solve those things. But I do think that the Nuggets are going to have to find some ways to improve their transition and mid-transition defense just to stop the ball. You just got to slow them down a little bit. A couple other things on the defensive side that I noticed tonight. There is Justin Holiday has a pretty bad habit, and this is pretty common for guys that are new to Denver, of you have to be very quick with your help assignments on Denver. They don't win a lot of like 50-50 balls. They don't dominate in terms of digging the ball out. They're not a great steal team. And so when there are moments when the ball stops and you see an opportunity to kind of go in and help for a steal, those are times when you actually need to make sure that your recoveries are good on the perimeter, because Jamal's not going to win a lot of those contests. And I don't think Joker will a lot of the time either. And so what winds up happening is guys will commit trying to make a play, and then the ball gets swung out and it's an open three. You kind of have to protect against it. There needs to be, honestly, I think from Justin Holiday, maybe a little bit more cautiousness, like play a little bit more prevent with the defense on that side. I think that might help some of those possessions for him. I still like the looks that Justin Holiday is helping them create. He hasn't knocked him down like Julian Strother, and I think Strother deserves to play in the regular season. I think he deserves to play on opening night. I don't think he will, but I think he deserves to play on opening night. But Justin Holiday, I think, can bring a lot to the table. But these little things you have to kind of learn along the way. I want to give a shout out to Braxton Key, who I think has actually played really well in preseason. Look, tonight I'm not like, it's not Julian Strother, right? Braxton Key was 2 of 3 from the field in 16 minutes, 6 points, 2 steals, rebound and an assist for Strother, for Braxton Key. But I've liked what Braxton Key has kind of brought to the table. The plus minus kind of reflects this. I've liked him since I saw him when I did the pre-work on him, when they had him to the team. Liked him in the first preseason game. I've seen consistently good things. Like, I kind of like what Braxton Key has brought to the team, more so maybe than Hunter Tyson, who got a lot of run with the starters tonight, and still honestly just a little bit lost and a little bit overwhelmed by the speed of the game, and that's okay. Like, Hunter had a great summer league. It didn't translate necessarily into preseason. He's a young player. There's time. Maybe he's much better by midseason the way Peyton Watson was. Speaking of which, still not thrilled about Peyton Watson. There was a sequence tonight where he kind of got mixed up on a play and allowed a dunk, and I think he was confused because I think he thought he switched off to Zeke, and maybe he did, and I just missed off the call out there. But there's a play where he's trying to dribble on the perimeter. He's trying to drive, and he drives into a double team. The second that second guy shows, you have to reverse the ball. And he didn't. And you could tell the guys on the other side were like, okay. And they got them deep in the clock. And so Reggie Jackson had to take an emergency shot. And you just don't want those kind of possessions. So there's still a lot of concerns, I think, from Peyton Watson. If you missed the game, by the way, no Christian Brown, no Michael Porter Jr., and Julian Strother got the night off. Strother's put in a lot of work and kind of has proved himself. And so this was honestly, I just think, more of a, hey, let's see Hunter Tyson with the starters. Let's see what that looks like. He started tonight. Let's get Braxton Key some minutes. They took a longer look at Peyton Watson with 20 minutes in the second half. Honestly, he didn't play in the first half, which we all thought was kind of interesting. And then some more minutes for Zeke tonight. Zeke was fine. Zeke battled on a couple of plays, drew some fouls. That's one thing that is kind of good about Zeke, is that he is willing to drive into contact and draw a foul. Like, he's not just going to like loft up a floater or a short jumper. He's willing to go in and do the dirty work. if he can just stay healthy, that's a positive, because that's honestly a pretty good way for that defensive unit to operate. One more like kind of note, and this will lead us into our final segment. One of the things I want to talk about there, I'm worried about the second unit's rebounding. The first unit's rebounding is so ridiculous because, again, like Nikola in this game had 14 rebounds in 28 minutes. Like, it's just absurd how this guy, his rebounding dominance is unbelievable. And Aaron's willing to soak up a lot of that as well. They just don't have anybody on the second unit that can rebound. They just don't have anybody. I mean, your leading rebounder on the second unit was Zeke had 6 tonight, and he did really good work when he was on the floor. I thought he like gave good effort in those, but there was one where it was like, digging out random loose balls. And again, he's being asked to kind of do stuff on the perimeter. They're a little undersized in the second unit because the young guys don't have 2 years of strength and conditioning training. And that, to me, makes me a little bit worried for what that's going to look like. The other thing with that second unit is the 2-guard lineup with Reggie Jackson and Jamal Murray when Murray staggers. And, well, I got to think about that, and we'll talk about that next on Locked On Nuggets. Right now, I want to tell you about Jase Medical. So Jase Medical offers you the Jase case, and the Jase case is absolutely incredible because it's a personalized emergency medication kit. It contains 5 essential antibiotics, which is pretty amazing. And you can customize it now with dozens of add-on medications. You can choose the medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs. The FDA chief, Dr. Robert Califf, has identified drug shortages and the need to strengthen the drug supply chain as a significant priority. So these issues and drug shortages have caused real problems, and I've seen this in northern Colorado with various things just being out. The other problem is, if you really are going to need these in an emergency, you may not be able to get to the kind of medical care, or maybe there's an emergency, whether it's a storm or whatever else, a natural disaster. You're going to need these medications and not be able to get them. And that's where the Jase case really comes in. So absolutely handy. You can also buy a gift card for family or your loved ones so they can get a Jase case of their own. Just go to jasemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Matt Moore with you on a Friday. Make sure to check out the show later today with Adam Mares and Swipa. Final segment. There are certain things that you just know going into a season. Like, I know that we're going to have fights about Justin Holiday versus Julian Strawther. I'm trying not to because Julian just looks amazing. He looks so good. We knew last season there was going to be fights about Christian Brown versus Davon Reed. I knew there was going to be fights about Zeke Naji versus DeAndre Jordan. There's certain things you can kind of predict. And one thing I'm just going to, and I predicted this when they signed DeAndre Jordan, which is he's going to play until Christmas. He's going to be a minus 57. He's going to be out of the rotation. And that's what happened. DeAndre was a vital part of them winning the title last year. He also was a minus 60 by Christmas and was out of the rotation. There's just some things you can predict in the NBA season. The 2-guard lineups with Jamal Murray and Reggie Jackson aren't going to work. They're not going to work. There's a lot of reasons for this. It's not about the quality of players. It's just about how they operate. And some of this has to do with when Jamal has played with the bench unit in the past, he's thrived and played amazing when it was Monte Morris. Monte is not like a considerably better player than Reggie Jackson. I think he's probably I'd rather have Monte for a number of reasons because of the things that I value, but he's not a phenomenally better player than Reggie Jackson, and Reggie's got a lot more experience than Monte. But Monte's very much a pure point guard. He's a floor general. Doesn't need to shoot, doesn't necessarily look to shoot unless it's important for him to, is consistent and low mistake. Reggie Jackson is not that, and that's not a knock on Reggie. Reggie brings different things to the table. Reggie has more shot creation than Monte Morris does. And that's important. You need that. When you don't need shot creation? When Jamal Murray's on the floor. That's when you don't need it. those lineups are going to struggle. They're both going to have issues defensively with the similar type of guys. They're going to go back and forth with guys that are extremely quick with good touch around the rim, torching them. And they'll switch off and be like, okay, you take him. And then the other guy's going to get cooked. You can't keep asking KCP to clean up all these mistakes. You just can't do that. This again gets into why losing Bruce Brown is going to be a little bit of a problem. But offensively, there's also not a lot of like dynamicism either. There was a couple of sequences I thought were pretty good where Zeke and Reggie got into some DHO action and it worked. And Reggie looked really pretty comfortable there. I actually just think that Denver could really use some more DHO action with Zeke, but also Zeke's not really going to be that good at it because he doesn't have a wide base. If you are one of the members of the Vlatko Hive and saying this is why Vlatko would have helped, you're absolutely right. I think Vlatko and Reggie probably would have made each other better. But Vlatko's not going to be here. I honestly think that the Nuggets would be better off playing Jamal and Nikola in handcuffed units. And what I mean by that is they're going to play the first 10 minutes of the first quarter and then the last 5 minutes of the second. Last 6, depending on how many minutes you want to play them. Those two should play together always. And then you stagger Aaron Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell, Pope, or MPJ. I honestly don't know what Jamal is going to do for the second unit that lifts their floor. It is not about how good of a player that Jamal Murray is. It is not how, Jamal's proven. Jamal doesn't need to pick up 15 points with the bench to prove how good he is. Everyone knows how good he is. He has earned his flowers, and everyone has given it to him for his playoff performance. And he may very well end up being an all-star this year. I don't love him as leading this particular second unit. If the second unit looked different, then sure. If it was nothing, but if it was like a great pick and roll or DHO center, like a Kelly Olynyk, or Isaiah Stewart, or Wendell Carter Jr., a number of guys could operate with Jamal and make that unit click if you just had shooters around them. But they don't have that. Okay, they have a switch-all unit that's built off of defensive malleability. If your entire identity of that second unit, and DeAndre Jordan said this, that second unit's going to have to be defined by defense. If that second unit is going to be defined by defense, you can't play Jamal and Reggie Jackson together. I honestly don't even think Reggie's that bad of a defender. I don't. I think Reggie could be totally fine taking the second to third primary assignment versus any opponent. I think he's fine. He actually had some pretty good sequences tonight in terms of containment in pick and roll situations. He and Joker did a very good job of hedging in various spots. I like the way that Reggie looks next to Nikola defensively. Key here is everyone looks good next to Nikola offensively. I like the way Reggie looked next to Nikola defensively. But Reggie and Jamal create too many issues. So at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm not going to lose my mind when they play it. It's just, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to be a problem. They are going to stagger Jamal Murray with the second unit. Those units are going to struggle. Reggie's going to take the majority of the blame. Some of it will be fair. Some of it won't be. They're going to lose those minutes. I can't say that I can see any other way that works out. And they'll still win a lot of games and they'll still be a really good team. But it would be in their best interest to find some sort of solve for that. And for me, that would mean keeping Jamal with Nikola, destroy those minutes, keep them together, figure out other guys you can stagger with the second unit to make that work. That's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets for a Friday. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to tune in to Adam and Swipa later today on Friday. On Sunday night, World's Finest, we will start previewing the beginning of the season, and the Lakers game. We'll continue that through into Tuesday's show with Swipa, and then we'll be off and running with post-game reacts all the way through, starting with Ring Night next Tuesday. Hope you guys have had a great week and a great offseason. Let's get to work. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.